I'm Theo.
And I'm Juliet.
And this is Apologies Accepted.
We offer an entertaining look at some of the big issues in history by examining public apologies of the famous and infamous.
We're looking at politicians, serial killers, actors, and you.
Send us a public apology you would like to make, and we'll read it on the air and give you a chance to redeem yourself, or just get some guilt off your shoulders.
We're here for you. Once a week, maybe more if you're really, really sorry. Hi, everybody.
This is Apologies Accepted, the podcast. And I'm not Theo.
And I'm not Juliet, but I am trying to step on all of her lines. You paused at the beginning, and I was like, oh, she forgot she needs help.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your generosity and kindness.
A hero for everyone. You are welcome.
For me. So, hey, what's shaking, Bacon?
My sister has returned from the great state of North Carolina.
That's right. Is she still with you?
And you mean alive?
No, I mean visiting.
Yeah, she's still with us.
Okay.
She's still here. Today's the day that she leaves to go to San Antonio to stay with her daughter to spend the night. And then she goes and gets the keys to her apartment, which is her
new apartment,
temporary space for the next year or so until she gets things situated and figures out, what she wants to be when she grows up. Yeah. And so we've had a whole week together where we have not had one argument except for one argument. Well,
that's good. One argument is good.
It's amazing. We couldn't be in the same room for more than 5 minutes without going straight for each other's eyes.
Yeah.
Right. And I've gotten so close so many times, just squishing that eye in her head. And so this moment was, I don't remember what night it was. It was like Thursday. It could have been Friday. I don't know. But it was later on in the week. And we were talking about the Google cars that are driving around Austin.
Oh, yeah.
And they're the driverless cars or whatever, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I made my comment, which we have had this discussion where it's like, dumbest idea in the world. This is stupid. Who's doing it? Oh, Google. Okay, got it. But yeah. And then I made the comment that I always make, which is, I sound just like my great-grandparents talking about a horseless carriage. And so, yeah, I recognize what's happening here. And my sister said, you've never spoken to your great-grandparents. You don't know what they would think. You can't say that.
Oh, funny.
And then I went straight to, I could say anything I want. And it's not that I got so mad. It's I bit at the bait.
Right.
Right? What I should have said was, who wants tea?
Right.
But no, it was like, you're going to challenge me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to challenge you. No. I was here first. And by here, I mean on this planet. You are a temporary visitor. I am permanent like gravity.
Right.
So, yeah.
So that's what the argument was about? Your great-grandparents and the horseless carriage?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. And, did it last more than 10 minutes? No.
Maybe.
Did it go on for maybe about 10 minutes? Neither one of us likes to lose.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, so that was that. And then just running around town and doing stuff. And, we've had a really good time.
Good.
Yes. So went to the outlet, bought more baskets. Those baskets failed. I'm going to, instead of a stack of newspapers, I'm going to be the person who hoards baskets.
Perfect.
Sad.
Baskets all over.
Baskets all over. Baskets. The great basket shortage will be because of me and my need to find baskets to hold pillows. Yes. So,
well, I think the real question is, why so many pillows?
I have an answer for that because I have a thing for pillows, blankets, baskets, and bowls, right?
Yes.
And it's those things that provide comfort and mean security in home. Right. So that's what that is.
Got it.
But also, who knows? Maybe I have some weird gene that's like, oh, basket, must have. Oh, bowl, must have. But anyway, enough about me. What's going on with you? What's shaking bacon?
Nothing's going on. I just random errands, run around the house and taking the dog to the vet and, that sort of thing. And of course I was mentioning before I was silenced and told this was a topic for the podcast that the weather has been nice.
Oh, this is mandatory now.
The Juliet weather report. Looking out the window right now, it's foggy as hell today, but yesterday was a beautiful day, just a beautiful day, sunny. It was a little bit on the warm side, but it was really nice, and I really enjoyed it from my couch.
What was from your couch? What was the high yesterday, please?
I believe it was 80 degrees.
Oh,
and I know, right? I'm like, it's so hot. And you're like, it's 106 here, bitch. How hot is it there in Austin, Texas?
Why, it was 104 yesterday.
Oh, my God.
When I got out of my car, my elbow accidentally brushed against the side of the car. Yeah, whatever.
Uh-huh.
However I managed to do that. And it burned.
Wow.
I mean, it stung. It was like, hot.
Wow.
Yeah, bad. It will be 107 here today, they say, and with the humidity, because, it's not just enough that it's hot, it's also humid.
Right.
Yeah. It's going to be like 119, and so bad.
Oh, my God.
And
That's
then,
really bad.
And this is really exciting. It gets into our topic today, which is human genetics, etc. But there's this thing, and I forget what they call it. They call it like wet death or heat death. But the human body cools itself down by sweating, right? So we sweat, and then the air comes and picks the sweat up through evaporation, and that reduces our skin temperature, which however that all works. That's how we cool off, right?
Right.
If you didn't know that, that's how all that works. You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome again. So when it's humid, that doesn't happen. So we're all going to boil.
Right.
As the planet heats up.
We're all going to steam to death.
Yeah, that's it.
That's disgusting.
Yeah. So.
But I'm sorry to hear that.
What a great note we're starting out on. I'm thrilled. But, if you start at the bottom, you can only go up. Right?
Okay, well, good. We should start at the bottom of every podcast then. That's the way we should do it. And maybe we already do. I don't know. But I'm sitting here looking at your picture on Zoom, and I'm admiring your shirt. So tell me about your shirt.
My shirt is from Gap Outlet. Thank you, Gap, for having an outlet. And it's Basquiat with the dinosaur in the crown. And
it's so cute.
I couldn't be more excited about it. But I forgot why it was relevant.
Well, I was listening to a podcast, and actually, it was the Linoleum Knife podcast, which I probably tried to make you listen to before. But they talk about movies, but for some reason they were also talking about Basquiat because the Basquiat estate, and I don't know any of the right words for any of this, but they had been authenticating all of the Basquiat art pieces, and there were so many forgeries that they gave up. They stopped doing the authentication. They fired all of their authenticators or whatever. I know there's another word for it, but I don't know what it is. They fired all of their authenticators and have just given up. So now there's a bunch of Basquiat forgeries on the marketplace.
Right, which decreases the value of the originals because if you can't tell a fake from an original, then you have no way of knowing really if it's original, blah, blah, blah. I think everybody can figure that out for themselves. I don't have to do everyone's homework. Same thing with Elvis.
Elvis?
Yes. So, how there's this Elvis movie that's coming out?
Yes, I've seen the ads.
And the ads say, Priscilla Presley wept. She could not believe how wonderfully they brought her husband back to life on the screen.
She's still alive?
Yeah, well, apparently. Or they found a really great psychic who was able to, she's crying in the other world. And then their daughter, who was married to Michael Jackson, whose name? Oh, Lisa Marie Presley. Right. I was like, I can't think of her name. What is her dumb name? Because I haven't thought about her in years. Whatever about Lisa Marie. She also is stunned by the film and thinks it's so amazing. And, my father's legacy will live. And this actor really embodied all the characteristics, morals, and values of my dad and blah, 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 right? So the only reviews have been from the mother and the daughter.
Okay.
Right. So, okay, cool. Probably going to be a winner. But at the same time, I don't know. Maybe it will be a good film. I'm not an Elvis fan. I don't care.
Right.
the Elvis estate has decided recently that Elvis's image and the copyright is being infringed upon by ministers in Vegas and anybody else who dresses up as Elvis and pretends to be Elvis Presley.
Now they're deciding this?
All Elvis Presley impersonators are ordered to cease and desist impersonating Elvis Presley. I mean, it sounds like a dumb joke, right? But yeah, the estate is coming after Elvis impersonators because I guess there's not any. I mean, I will say this. James and I got married in Vegas, and we got married by Elvis, right? Because it was like, if you're going to do the Vegas thing, do the Vegas thing. And I wanted to go through the drive-thru where you shout, "I do," into the clown's mouth, and then you get a cheeseburger at the end. Yeah. Absolutely. It's the American dream.
Absolutely.
But it was like a 3-month wait to get in to do that or whatever. And so, right. And this was a very spur-of-the-moment decision that had taken like 17 years to get to. So, right. Like, let's just do it now.
So were you in Las Vegas already and you were just like, let's get married? Or were you like, let's go to Las Vegas and get married?
I was like, let's go to Las Vegas to get married because we were selling a house that I loved and going to buy a house that I didn't love, but I could see the logic in buying that house, right?
Right.
And I was like, you know, I'm officially unemployed. And so any bank is just going to be like, who's this guy? What's he doing here? So, you know, this will be a more comfortable process for me.
Right.
If we're married, because at least then everybody knows who the heck I am when I come in to sign paperwork or whatever, right? Otherwise, I'm just some random whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And so James was like, for you, I'm willing to do that. Okay, great. So we went to Vegas, and it was Elvis, and our Elvis Presley impersonator also had Superman jewelry on because he did both characters. So he had a shitload of like rings and necklaces and all of that, right? Because he was doing like Vegas Elvis, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
He wasn't doing young hot Elvis, but he also wasn't doing like old fat Elvis, right? So somewhere in between,
in the middle.
Yeah, and I saw the Superman signet ring. I mean, it was like, oh, okay. Well, I could see where you could do both characters. So, yeah, cool. And whatever, it just added to the goofiness, right? But I can see where that's not really living up to the Elvis standard, the Elvis blah.
The brand.
The brand. Thank you so much. There's the word I'm looking for. And to think that I used to do brand enforcement for Disney. I can't think of the stupid word. But yeah, so interesting that Basquiat is that market's flooded with frauds and fake copies fake copies that are fakes or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. And
I mean, that's what I heard on Linoleum Knife. It could all be false. I don't know, but that's what I heard. So
I mean, how could you doubt those two gentlemen?
I don't know. They're great. I love them.
I listened to 1-2 episodes and I did like them. I liked them. I could listen to them talk about anything, right? But I think the movies they were talking about, I was like, So it didn't catch for me. But who knows? Maybe I'll give them another try.
Day.
Maybe one day. You have excellent taste in podcasts. You are the one that introduced me to this art form.
Well, thank you. That's I have excellent taste in podcasts, and we have a podcast now. So there you go.
Yes.
And it's the best of all the podcasts.
Well, I mean, without saying.
So walk me through this like I'm 4. How does Elvis relate to our topic today? I'm confused.
Oh, well, in the same way that Basquiat relates to our topic today, and that is we're ultimately talking about copies. Right? Now, we're talking about a guy who said some stuff that sort of discounted the contributions of people. And that's a discussion because I have some thoughts around that, right? I've realized now what I'm doing is
20 minutes.
I'm in your territory. You do the framework. But we're going to end up talking about genes, Genes, everyone. And that has to do with replication and copies.
Okay, gotcha. Gotcha. All right, so let's jump in on that note. So we're talking today about Eric Lander, who was a mathematician. He apparently was very smart and somewhat of a child prodigy, and he did go on to earn a PhD as a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford College. He loved math, but he didn't, according to Wikipedia, he didn't want to live such a, quote, monastic, unquote, career. So he didn't know what to do. So like everyone who doesn't know what to do, including me, of course, when I was 20-some years old, didn't know what to do, take a job teaching economics at Harvard Business School.
Oh, totally. Me too. Yeah. That was that summer I was really lost.
That's right. Everyone goes through that phase. So his brother is a biologist, and his brother suggested that Eric look at neurobiology, and this sort of captured Eric's attention because, as he said, there's a lot of information in the brain. No shit, Eric. And to understand mathematical neurobiology, he thought he had to study cellular neurobiology, and then he went on to study microbiology and genetics. And as he said, when I finally feel I have learned genetics, I should get back to these other problems. But I'm still trying to get the genetics right. So, yeah, genetics is a land of opportunity for study. So, well said, Eric Lander. Now, genomics is the study of everything to do with genomes, which are the complete set of DNA in an organism or a living being. And so basically the genomics is the study of genetics, just FYI. And I have a note here that says, then a miracle occurs, which is because Lander was a mathematician, and he said he studied microbiology and genetics, but there's nothing in his Wikipedia or anywhere else I can find in any of his biographies that say that he actually did study genetics or genomics. So he must have, because he went on to found the Broad Institute, which is a genomic research center in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And he was one of the people who led the Human Genome Project, which, if you remember, if you were around, it's been a while now, sequenced the human genome in 2001 at the same time that the corporation Celera did. And I don't know how he got from mathematics to being the founder of the Broad Institute and a co-leader of the Human Genome Project. I don't know if you found anything like that in your research, but you probably didn't go into it that deeply.
No.
It just caught my attention. I was like, how did you become a genomics researcher from mathematics? You kind of have to go back and study some biology and some other stuff before you even get to genomics. And where did you do that? And what degree do you have? But he doesn't seem to have one.
Oh, well, it's because of the, what do they call them? The Immaculata? No. There's that secretive group, the Illuminati. That's it.
The Illuminati.
Yeah, it's because of the Illuminati. Yeah, that's it.
I'll take that. That's fine.
It's the only explanation.
So at some point between, I don't know, he got his PhD in 2001. He got some sort of degree, we would assume, in genetics. And he went on in 2016 to actually write a history of CRISPR, which is a gene editing technology. But his history of CRISPR downplayed the contributions of the two female scientists who are named Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuelle Charpentier, who actually were primary people involved, and they have been since awarded the Nobel Prize for their work. And instead, he overstated the contributions of a Broad biologist, Feng Zhang. So this has been portrayed as sexist, and this impression, I think Wikipedia said, is supported by the title of his essay, which is Heroes of CRISPR. So in 2021, which we'll talk about in a little bit, when he was undergoing a Senate confirmation hearing for the science advisor role under, Biden, Lander acknowledged that he had understated Doudna and Charpentier's contribution and called that a, quote, mistake that he regretted. I felt terrible, he said. Blah, blah, blah. I made a mistake. So
hold on. Did he say blah blah blah, or did he say blah 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 blah? Because
no,
that's
he said,
important.
I felt terrible. I made a mistake.
Okay, all right. I so wish he had said, I feel terrible. Blah blah blah. Blah, blah, blah. I made a mistake.
Yeah.
Oh, Apology Hall of Fame. That one.
That's a good one. So CRISPR is, as I mentioned, a gene editing technology, but I think you have some information about CRISPR.
I do, because all of this got into places where it was like, oh, that feels obvious, and that feels obvious, and that feels... So in the end, I was sort of, what is this thing? Why is it important? Right? And so let's let's look at CRISPR. Hi, everybody. It's time for your science podcast. So
Yay.
CRISPR stands for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And a palindrome, for those of us who had to look it up this morning, because we couldn't remember, is a word that is spelled the same forwards or backwards, right? So it holds the same value regardless of which way you read it or approach it.
Right.
So cool. CRISPR technology will be as life-changing for humanity as the internet.
Okay.
It will be as big and as important as the internet.
Gotcha.
I'm blown out of the water by that because my life is entirely dependent upon the internet now. If I don't have my phone for 5 seconds, it's not because I'm going to miss a phone call. It's because I don't have access to the internet.
The internet.
Right. What if somebody asked me what happened on June 3rd, 1972? I need my internet. So let's take a quick look at sort of what's happening, right? What is this thing? So this is it's a biological immune response that's been present in single-cell organisms for billions of years that we, being humanity, sort of accidentally tripped over in about 2001-ish. And what happens is, or what happened was somebody, I'm not going to worry about the names because there are a lot of people involved in this. This is not the brainchild of any 5 people. This is the brainchild of a group of people, right? Exactly. Who were aware of each other's research, and what one person was doing sort of triggered a thing in somebody else's brain that was like, oh, well, that's my research, right? And so it was a lot of that happening. So this guy was sequencing the genome of a particular bacteria that lives in super, super, super salty water, 10 times more salty than the ocean. And he noticed, as he was handwriting out the genetic code of this single-cell organism, that he was starting to see the same sequence of genes appear, and then there'd be another sequence of genes that would follow that sequence that sort of just didn't do anything. And then here would come the same sequence of genes again. So he would see code, call it nonsense, right? Nonsense, code. And he noticed that all of the nonsense was the same amount of code, right? And so he started thinking of those as spaces. And so you had code, space, code, space. So in every cell, there is this protein that's called Cas9. I don't know what the Cas stands for. And Cas9 is basically like Pac-Man. And so it will go into DNA and snip it, just cut it, right? Effectively breaking the strand. Now, strands break all the time naturally without the help of Cas9. Strands break when you go to the dentist and they do an X-ray. Everything the radiation's hitting in your face, the DNA gets broken, right? The body has ways of dealing with that. And so what the body does is you have this broken DNA strand and you have a sister DNA strand. And the broken, again, real simple because I don't know enough about this. It's been 7 years since I've even looked at a biology book. The broken strand says to the whole strand, oh, oops, help. I lost some DNA. You're my twin sister. What's up? And the twin unravels a bit, allows the broken strand to couple with it, if you will, pick up some of the code, and then the broken strand reknits. And so the missing DNA is back in place because the backup copy, the twin sister, is like, here you go. This is what you're missing. Wonderful. So Cas9, this protein in every cell, intentionally breaks DNA, right? And Cas9 is a protein that has a strand of, sorry, everybody, I know this is going to get this could get real boring and real dry. It has a strand of RNA inside it. And that Cas9 is carrying the snippet of RNA, right? And it goes into the DNA and it looks for the snippet that it has. And when it finds that snippet, it cuts it out. This is actually an immune response that bacteria evolved over the course of billions of years and have had this for billions of years. So how it started, where it comes from, is a virus infects a cell, right? Sticks in its own genetic code, and our DNA, any DNA, picks up that genetic code, gets supplanted by that genetic code, and that genetic code creates replications that explode, and then you have tons of new viruses in the body, and they go out and they infect other cells, right? Mm-hmm. So some cells develop a response somehow, when we're not quite sure of how this happened in the wild, or maybe they are, and it just wasn't in any of the documentaries or the podcasts that I listened to, had a way of incorporating the new virus DNA in their own DNA, thereby creating an immune response within the cell. So that cell didn't explode full of copies of this virus, right? Because it already had some of the DNA, so the virus wasn't able to replicate in that cell. And so, sorry, I'm losing this thread now of okay, well then how did that get into Cas9? So, this is how it gets into Cas9. So Cas9, the protein, right, is fed that viral RNA from the cell. And the next time an infection, or the next time the virus shows up to infect the cell, right, the Cas9 has that code that says, this is the snippet I need to cut out of this DNA that I'm finding. So when the virus comes back to try and reinfect the cell that already has its coding, the Cas9 is able to detect the new DNA and snip it so that it's now ineffective. So that is how that happens. So it's something that had been utilized in the yogurt industry for about 10 years.
Yogurt, really?
Yes. And so what happened with yogurt is there are companies that sell, you probably know this being in pharmacology, companies that sell bacteria to other companies, right?
Sure.
We're going to grow it, we're going to culture it, we're going to give it to you, and then you're going to use it. Great. And so those companies that farm bacteria and sell it to Dannon yogurt,
yep,
their bacteria was dying because it was getting these viral infections. So one of the guys at the pharmacy was one of the guys at the factory, at the farm, let's call it, was like, how can I stop this from happening? How can I improve the immune response of the bacteria that we're selling so they'll quit dying when they get to the place and we'll quit losing money? So it's a problem that he was tackling as well. Now, I'm not saying that he invented CRISPR, right? Because I don't think he fully understood what was happening, but he found a way to solve this puzzle, and the solution was Cas9, right? Now, I don't know that he didn't identify Cas9, et cetera. However, he accidentally stumbled upon this process. It was something that he was using to help bacteria fight off infection, right? So I'm circling around Jennifer Duda, and not quite sure how to land there. But in that way of smart people know other smart people, and industries produce publications and people read them, and you know who to talk to about things. Jennifer Duda was informed about CRISPR technology, right? In passing, and early 2000s. And she's the one that thought, oh, well, you could take the RNA and you could put it in Cas9 and it's going to go in and it's going to target a specific strand and a specific code within DNA, and you could cut that out. And then there'd be a way to sort of force the code you want in to the DNA, as opposed to letting the body just sort of naturally do its thing, right? And she saw that more as a tool for use in the lab. Interesting things you could do with DNA in the lab. She had not jumped straight to medical implications and or changing the evolution of mankind, right? Which is where all of this CRISPR stuff goes. It goes straight from the test tube to man playing God. We're going to be able to change everything. So that's how CRISPR works. And that's where it was, or that's where how it works and how it was discovered. And so a couple of quick examples of some of the things that could happen. We're all familiar with BRCA1, the code for breast cancer. Mm-hmm. So easy enough to go in, snip that out.
Right.
Done. Problem solved. Are
they doing that now, or is this just an example of what they could do?
This is where we will be there within a few years.
Okay.
Right. So in the early 2000s, we've been playing with genetics, as everybody knows, since the 1990s when we decoded the human genome. In the early 2000s, might have even been the year 2000 in France, they had a group of terminally ill children, and they decided that they were going to do some genetic experiments on the kids. And let's think of it as genetic medicine or just call it genetic medicine, right?
Okay.
So I don't mean to say, because I did say perform experiments, which is what they were doing, right? But the kids were terminal, right?
Okay.
And so this was like, there's an opportunity to maybe save a child's life.
Okay.
And so they did play with injecting genes into the sick kids.
Sure.
But there's no way to control when you just throw genetic material into an organism what happens to that genetic material, because it is random. And some of the kids developed cancer and died. Now, again, these were children who were going to die anyway from their illnesses. And so CRISPR is a more elegant, sophisticated, and direct way of snipping out code.
Gotcha.
Another example, CCR5, that's the gene that makes people susceptible to HIV. If you get rid of that, you lose the receptor for HIV. You can no longer get infected by HIV. And then we start bordering into science fi, right? Now, this is literal, but again, every documentary, every news article, every podcast, they quickly get to this discussion point, right? Mm-hmm. Which is changing men into machines. Mm-hmm. And so there's a code called SCN9A, and it creates a protein that's a pain communicator. Basically, it helps transfer pain signals from the body to the nervous system. So if you cut that out, you lose all sense of pain. Now, there are people who are born without this genetic sequence, the SCN9A. Most famously, there was a 14-year-old boy in Pakistan who was a street performer who would stick knives in his arms because he felt no pain. And he was paid to jump off of a roof, and he did that because he knew he would feel no pain, and he died, right?
Oh, God.
But they were able, whoever grabbed a sample of his tissues, right, did a genetic analysis, like, why is this kid able to stick in that? And so... Right,
and they found the gene.
Exactly. So,
was missing.
So we know this, right? We know this. And so we could actually go in and do this. And then it gets into a question of should. Jennifer Dauda talks about how in the early days of her research, after realizing that you could take a snippet of RNA and stick it in Cas9, and Cas9 is just going to do its little biological thing and go in and snip some DNA, right? That, and this was a repeated dream that she had, where she'd be brought into a room by one of her colleagues, and they would say, somebody wants to talk to you. There's a big, important meeting, right? She's going to go talk to this person, this thing, this big, urgent meeting thing. And she walks in the room, and there's a shadow sitting in a chair at a meeting table. And as she approaches the table, the shadow leans forward into the light, and it's Adolf Hitler. And he says to her, tell me more about this Cas9. Right? And that's exactly where all this bullshit goes to. I don't want to take it there because I really like the science of it. And I like that, it's a natural thing. It's been happening for billions of years. And it really is just all machinery, right? But then we do start getting into these moral, we'll call them quandaries, dilemmas. Yeah, exactly. And so when we look at what happened in this situation with Cas9 and so many scientists playing a role, right? Dowda works at, and I'm probably mispronouncing her name, and I apologize for that, works at UC Berkeley. The Broad Company also was doing work on this, right? And Dowda's work was in test tubes. The Broad Company's work was in actual living cells. They both filed for patents, and there's been a patent war happening since 2012. And Broad has recently been granted some rights, and the difference is that Berkeley's patent was for work within a test tube.
Okay.
Broad's work was within the human cell, which has medical implications. So It seems like Broad will be the company that wins. Is it Broad or Brody? I always want to say Brody.
Broad.
Okay. Broad will win this patent war fight thing, right? And so that's CRISPR. That's how it works. That's a little bit about some of the patent fighting that's happening and what the
really
prime differences are. Why is one company being granted a patent and the other one not? And some of that just simply has to do, and I did not look at the Broad people who, that sounds like I intentionally was diving into research. And the documentary that I was looking at was focused on Jennifer Dowda, probably because she was a more interesting story. Because that Hitler dream, stirring.
Yeah. Wow. So the discussion of genetic editing and what we could do with that and whether or not that's good for humanity, and the various ways, like your example with Hitler, we could go seriously wrong with that. Sort of related to that, Lander in 2018 had to apologize. So we're back to Eric Lander again and what he's doing. And he apologized again for toasting James Watson on James Watson's 90th birthday. And Watson, of course, as probably everyone knows, is the co-discoverer of the double helix, the structure of DNA. But in his later years, he's still alive, he's become known for racist and misogynist views. He's said things like exposure to sunlight in equatorial regions increases sexual urges, that thin people are more ambitious than other people, and that the intelligence of people in Africa is, quote, not really the same as ours, unquote. And that's interesting for his use of ours. And
I was
also
just going to ask that.
Yeah, he meant white people. So Eric Lander did toast James Watson on his birthday and got some kickback for doing that. He said, I was asked to toast James Watson last week for his role in the Human Genome Project on the occasion of his 90th birthday. This was in an email to the Broad Institute. And he said, people who have called this out are correct. I was wrong to toast, and I'm sorry. He then called Watson's views abhorrent and characterized them as sexist, racist, and anti-Semitic. I was conflicted about whether to do it, he said. I ultimately agreed to accommodate the request, but it was the wrong decision.
Well, also, not only was it the wrong decision, but you can toast the discovery without toasting the racist.
The man.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
That's a beautiful painting. Who knew Hitler could pick up a brush?
Right. I've never seen any of Hitler's paintings. I wonder if they're any good. I wonder if there are any around.
There's no way to ever know.
There's no way to ever know.
We could never find out.
So Lander himself has been described by colleagues who were contacted by STAT, which is a publication, a science publication, I think. Anyway, he was described as brilliant, prickly, and brash, as having an ego without end, and as a visionary who doesn't suffer fools gladly, and as an authentic genius who sees things the rest of us don't. So there's pros and cons to Eric Lander's personality, and it may have to do with who is actually speaking. Like, are you a white male talking, or are you maybe a female of color? Depends on how you see Eric Lander. So let's get forward now to January 2021. Very recently, President-elect Joe Biden nominated Eric Lander as a science advisor to the president and announced that he would elevate this position to a cabinet-level post, sort of in response to the anti-science direction that things have been going under Trump. In response, and it is hard to it's hard to understand why Joe Biden would nominate a person with this history, because there's no secret that Lander was problematic. I mean, none of this stuff was hidden, but he did. And in response, an organization called 500 Women Scientists, which is actually an organization of more than 500 women scientists, several thousands of women.
But women can't count. Thank you.
Yeah, right. This 500 Women Scientists organization has actually published an editorial in Scientific American asking Biden to consider nominating someone else to the position, because he was, of course, well known within the scientific community for offending women. But Biden ignored that editorial in Scientific American, and there was a confirmation hearing held in April of 2021, and the committee voted to report favorably on the nomination in May. And then his nomination was confirmed by the full Senate on May 28th, 2021, and was sworn in. Lander was sworn in as director of the Office of Science and Technology Policy in June. And during this hearing, he was asked about the CRISPR incident and about his having attended 2 gatherings where Jeffrey Epstein was present. And Jeffrey Epstein was a wealthy, large-scale donor to science who, of course, is also a convicted sex offender, or was a convicted sex offender before he died. Whether he killed himself or someone killed him is a matter of question. I don't know where you fall in that continuum. Do you think he killed himself, or do you think he was killed?
I'll say the world is filled with wild coincidences.
Yeah.
And so maybe, but I do wonder about why a billionaire who had access to all the money in the world was afraid that he would be going to jail.
Right.
And
weren't there things like the cameras happened to be off when he died, and weird other stuff like that? I mean, is that true? I don't know.
Is it true? I don't know, because I wasn't in the camera room when those cameras were deactivated, and anybody that says that I was is a liar. Yes, the cameras were off, and bullshit happened. Like a guard took a nap or something.
Guard was sick or something. He fell asleep or whatever.
Gone for 3 hours.
Was
right.
murdered. Yeah.
Right. And so the cameras are off, and the guard is gone, and somebody commits suicide. If you're going to commit suicide and people are there to watch and prevent you from doing it, you will take any opportunity. Well,
right.
You will. You will take any opportunity that presents itself to, like, I'm out. Bye.
To do it. Yeah.
I don't want to go to jail, even though I'm in jail. Right. So it's possible that he took advantage of the opportunity. Or it's possible that someone else took advantage of the opportunity. But either way,
we'll never know.
He is a convicted sex offender, human trafficker, pedophile, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, at least they were all underage, but.
Yeah. And Lander had pictures taken with him on at least 2 occasions.
And so, right. But here, I object, Your Honor. And so find someone who's rich and famous who didn't have a photo with Jeffrey Epstein, right? I mean, I'm no Trump fan at all, but Trump had photos with Epstein. And so for all those right-wingers that are like, Trump's amazing, I love him. But, everyone else who has a photo with Jeffrey Epstein, oh my God, Jeffrey Epstein is a pedophile too. Hi,
right.
Sorry.
Maybe not.
You don't get to,
It's like if you're a famous person also, you take pictures of people. It's just what happens. So, it doesn't mean that you necessarily had any sort of dealings with them beyond having the picture taken.
Right, exactly. It's not like he was on the island, like, I hate to say Bill Clinton, but like Bill Clinton was.
Mm-hmm.
This is a whole different topic. Yeah.
Politico reported in 2022 about a White House investigation because 14 current and former Office of Science and Technology policy staffers accused Lander of having bullied and demeaned his subordinates. So it didn't take very long. It took about a year for Lander to be accused of being an asshole at his new position. And Lander admitted to the behavior and issued an apology to staff on February 4th, saying, "I am devastated that I caused hurt to past and present colleagues by the way in which I have spoken to them. I believe it is not possible to continue effectively in my role, and the work of this office is far too important to be hindered." So he resigned on February 7th, 2022.
Wow.
Right. The investigation that was underway found evidence that he had bullied staff and uncovered instances of multiple women having complained to other staff about negative interactions with Dr. Lander, where he spoke to them in a demeaning or abrasive way in front of other staff. These 14 staff members noted that the negative behavior was directed against both men and women, although 6 staff members related that Lander appeared to, quote, take delight in trying to embarrass female colleagues in front of others. One staff member actually said that Lander showed an inability to change, saying after one encounter, "I hate that I do it," which is really,
very telling.
Very telling.
I can't control myself. I hate that I do it. I can't control
myself. I hate that I'm such an asshole. I'm not going to change.
Love the
I hate
feeling when it happens.
That's right. Obviously, I'm getting something out of it, or I wouldn't be continuing to do it. So the Office of Science and Technology Policy Deputy Counsel Rachel Wallace, who had been demoted by Lander from the role of general counsel, said that Lander, quote, retaliated against staff for speaking out and asking questions by calling them names, disparaging them, embarrassing them in front of their peers, laughing at them, shunning them, taking away their duties, and replacing them or driving them out of the agency. Numerous women have been left in tears, traumatized, and feeling vulnerable and isolated. So I don't like this Eric Lander very much. He's obviously very smart, but quite a jerk, especially to women and possibly people of color. So he did apologize in a letter to Joe Biden for what
he apologized in a letter to Joe Biden. How about a letter to all the people? Go on.
Thank you. Exactly the comment I was going to make in my review of the apology. So he wrote to Joe Biden and he said, "I am devastated that I caused hurt to past and present colleagues by the way in which I have spoken to them. It is clear that things I said and the way that I said them crossed the line at times into being disrespectful and demeaning to both men and women. That was never my intention. Nonetheless, it is my fault and my responsibility. I will take this lesson forward. I believe it is not possible to continue effectively in my role, and the work of this office is far too important to be hindered." So he did resign. He was a professor at MIT, and he's on leave now at MIT. He's no longer working at the Broad Institute. I could not find that he was still working anywhere at this point, but he's probably just taking some time off to regroup, and he'll be back doing some important thing in a matter of minutes.
Well, let's say that if you're super smart and your work can help humanity, then but you're a dick.
Right.
Okay. What do we do if Okay, I was going to say, what do we do if he invents a cure for cancer? Because we don't. And then it was like, oh no, what if it's Hitler? And so it's that thing of like, what if Hitler had invented the cure for cancer?
Okay.
We throw the cure for cancer away because it came from Hitler?
Because he was an asshole?
Right. And so, yeah. A very pro-Hitler podcast for us.
You distracted me and made me forget what I was going to say. So let's talk about the apology. I think the apology, let's see, what would I give it? I think the apology, because as you so astutely pointed out, was not directed at the people that he had harmed, but was a letter to Joe Biden. I think that disqualifies it pretty much right there. And so I give it a 0.
See, I'm going to give it a 1. And here's why I give it a 1.
Okay.
Because it's higher than you. And also, the letter that he wrote to the president does get entered into official records. So it's now part of, I mean, of course, this would be a part of history anyway, because it's just a historical thing that happened, but it's even more a part now of presidential communications. And so it resides in two spots in history, right? It's in the historical record I don't know that it would be in the presidential library at any point, but maybe, who knows, right? Who knows what'll get stuck in there. So, whether or not he meant to make this an official communication to a sitting president, which then would get stuck in American archives, right? Or not, I think that adds some weight. But, yeah, I mean, it was stupid.
Yeah.
But that's why he gets a 1, because whether or not he did that on purpose, it now echoes through all time, whether he wants it to or not, because now it's an official document that sits with the office of the executive, or the office of the president, or whatever it's called. Yeah, so that's why I give it a 1, but really,
it's really pretty
awful.
bad.
Yeah, it's super self-serving. Shouldn't get anything. Never should have gotten that far in the process. I'm really disappointed in the Biden administration
Yeah, me too. And they were supposed to have a safe and respectful workplace policy at the White House, which was intended to draw a contrast with the reality of life at the Trump administration. And instead of doing the research or caring about the background information on Lander and possibly others, they just went ahead and not hiring them because it would be against their safe and respectful workplace policy. They just went ahead and hired him, which is like saying, we don't care. We don't really care about our safe and respectful workplace policy.
That's exactly what that's saying. And they don't. People say things like that. Well, I will quote Rachel Maddow, which is, pay attention to what they do and not what they say.
Yeah.
Anybody can say anything. Thank you. Yes, I'm cool.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So do you have an apology expected or a who's it? Who's sorry now?
Who's it? I have a who's it. Yes, I do have. I have an apology expected, but I can't tell you the name of the person that apology expected from. But so we'll say this is an apology that is due to the world from the marbled crayfish, which... Crayfish or crawfish? Okay. Oh, crayfish is how it's spelled. Yes, and so this invasive species clones itself, and apparently it's the sort of a thing that probably didn't happen in nature, because it seems like, as they backtrack the genetics, that it's two crayfish from two different extreme parts of Asia that somehow met up and had babies that are capable of asexual reproduction. And I guess on some level, crayfish can reproduce asexually if they can just lay fertile eggs. So whatever happened, the speculation, and again, this is all speculation, is that these crayfish met in an aquarium in somebody's home and had some babies, and that somebody was like, there's too many crayfish in my aquarium, and flushed them or let them go, right?
Yeah.
And now they are taking over Europe and Asia and killing out other crayfish species, right? And because they are clones of themselves, and therefore they carry the exact same genetic I know you know what a clone is,
but
they now are potentially missing out on not so much biodiversity, but defenses against illnesses, viruses, etc. So they're displacing all the other crayfish species. I guess no, they're all the same species. Families?
No, they could be different species.
But still in the crayfish family? We did an episode on this. Shame on us for not being 1,000% sure. Yeah. But anyway, so that's my apology expected. It's either from nature or from the crayfish itself or from the person who flushed all those crayfish down a toilet, because I'm sure that's exactly what happened.
I hadn't heard about this. That's sad.
And
sad.
That reminds me of the time that I flushed a fish down the toilet so I could have a hamster.
Did you get the hamster?
I did. I had an aquarium because I was really into fish for whatever reason for a year.
10 minutes.
Yeah. Exactly. And it was a nice aquarium. And and my fish were dying or whatever, but this one fish was holding on, and I really wanted a hamster at that point because I was graduating up the species ladder. And my mother was like, "You're not getting a hamster until that fish dies."
Oh, and so you flushed the fish down the toilet. Suddenly your fish disappeared.
Yeah, it died.
And your mother was not suspicious at all.
I just know I had a hamster. I don't remember all the details. So that could be a Who's Sorry Now, 2 for 1. What you got? Apology expected.
So mine is more for pride, although it's not very positive. So the Sydney Morning Herald contacted Rebel Wilson to tell her they were going to out her in the next few days.
Oh.
Yes. So she came out herself, and the Sydney Morning Herald is now pissed off that she stole an exclusive from them. So they need to fucking apologize for everything that they involved.
I mean, number one, how fucking ridiculous that you call somebody and tell them you're going to do this thing, and then they take steps to prevent you from doing that thing, and then you get mad.
Right.
Number one. Number two, it's not 1990. I thought the whole outing thing was over. And really, you only out people who are being hypocritical, right?
Right.
That was the whole purpose of intentional outing, was to take dangerous gay people who were in positions of political power, masquerading as straight people, to protect themselves and throwing
like
other gay people.
Right.
Like Lindsey Graham is another great one, right? Find a gay male escort in D.C. who hasn't made a claim of having sex with Lindsey Graham. Right. I'm not saying that Lindsey Graham is gay. I'm just saying that other people are asking questions. Yes.
Right.
Yes, exactly. So that's outing. Rebel Wilson has never done anything to anybody.
No, not as far as I know, anyway.
I mean, there was some stuff about how she was inauthentic because Rebel Wilson isn't her real name.
It's not? Who cares?
Find someone who hasn't changed their name.
Right.
Well, I guess you can. But, whatever, right? So that's stupid. So that form of outing is just shitty.
Yeah,
that's
agreed.
Selling papers.
Agreed.
And that was the Sydney who?
The Sydney Morning Herald.
I will never read an article by the Sydney Morning Herald. I will never click on anything by the Sydney Morning Herald. I will never contribute to them in any way financially by giving them eyeballs on any of their articles. Yeah. And
it's ridiculous. Yeah. I can't believe that they would try to out somebody in 2022 and that they would call her up and tell her, we're going to out you, and then be surprised that she, like you said, I'm not just saying what you said, but yeah, I'm agreeing with you 100%.
Oh, well, see, so I had heard she came out, and I was like, oh, okay. Well, I'm really disconnected now from all the gossip because I didn't even know that it was a thing. I thought she was dating her personal trainer. Who was a male, because she went through the body transformation thing, right. And so, I just sort of had it in my head that was the marvelous person she was talking about when she would say, like, I'm transforming my life and I've met this amazing person. I'm like, oh, her trainer, sure, that makes sense. Why not?
Oh, I see. Yeah, everyone else does.
Yeah, so I was quite surprised.
Yep.
Pleasantly, not pleasantly, doesn't change anything for me.
Doesn't make any difference.
Right? Yeah, exactly. I mean, maybe now, maybe one day I'll be invited to some gay party and Rebel Wilson will be there. And then I can go up and I can say something like, I actually did enjoy Senior Prom. And I know a lot of people are shitting all over that movie right now, but it did uplift me. And so thank you for doing your work.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
See? Exactly. All right. So there's a movie on Netflix. It's called Senior Prom.
Okay.
Right. And it stars Rebel Wilson. And it's a comedy, as you might expect, right?
Sure.
It's not really a dramedy, but it's not always. And it's a very 1990s teenage feel-good movie distillation, right?
Okay.
It's Pretty in Pink, just done differently, right?
Sure.
But it's the same emotional journey. And so girl from Australia apparently has 2 American parents. They never really explain, but she has the Australian accent, and they both sounded American to me. comes to the States when she's like 13, and she's the weird girl, but then she decides she's going to be popular, and then she sort of makes that happen, and she becomes head cheerleader. And then one of the other cheerleaders is jealous of her, and Rebel Wilson goes to do this really important backflip during this really important cheer squad thing in front of the whole school. And the team doesn't catch her. Whether or not the other girl told people not to do that, they never really addressed that, but it certainly looks that way. But anyway, so Rebel Wilson lands on her back and goes into a coma for like 30 years, 20 years, and wakes up as a 37-year-old woman who hasn't finished high school, right? So she goes back to high school, but happily her best friend is the president of the high school, and her other best friend is the librarian at the high school, right? But somehow he'd gone off to Harvard to work in their underground archive thing, but then the woman he was going to marry broke up with him, and so he went back to his high school and gave up that job at like the National Archives. That's where it was at the underground Harvard library. So anyway, then she decides that she's going to become super popular again, right? And she had a roadmap before when she was 13 to 17 that she had figured out. So she just revises and updates the roadmap. But now it's Instagram and becoming an influencer and all that. And at the end of the day, she becomes prom queen, although that's something that her friend, the principal, had stamped out because prom queen, king, it just makes everything uncomfortable for people in high school. And she was trying to make high school very inclusive. But, yes, or better words, which is the one that you used, didn't even occur to me. And in the end, Rebel Wilson shows everybody that we're all different and we're all unique. And if we're all the same, it's so boring. So everybody vote for me for prom queen. And kind of they don't, because her mother is the girl that got those other cheerleaders not to catch Rebel Wilson. And so the mother rigs the cheerleader. It's all kinds of stuff happens in this thing, right? Now, I've watched it twice.
I can tell.
I thought, it's stupid. It's totally dumb, right? But it really cheered me up. It was something that like didn't require a lot of brain cells. There weren't any curveballs coming. But at the same time, there was some fresh, funny stuff in it. She's engaging and nice to watch. It's not that I'm a fan or not a fan. There are people that I name someone who's box office poison for you. Like who, if you see so-and-so's in a movie.
Cruise.
Same. Yeah. I wouldn't go see him. Who is somebody that like you will see anything? Doesn't matter.
Helen Mirren.
Ooh, good one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a really good one. Yeah. Same.
Yeah, totally, of course.
Totally the same. Absolutely. Any of the British matriarchs, right? Vanessa Redgrave.
Judi Dench.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's absolutely. Whose face I was seeing when I said Vanessa Redgrave. Because they're all interchangeable, too, like Liza Minnelli and Barbra Streisand and Judy Garland.
Yeah, absolutely. Same people.
Yeah, so anyway, I like her. I'm sorry that happened to her. It's unfortunate. Sydney Morning Herald, you suck real bad.
Yeah. I was just thinking that you were saying that the prom queen movie cheered you up. The movie that cheered me up relatively recently, that was a no-brainer. It's just sort of nothing really going on that you didn't expect, but it was really cute and really fun, was Brittany Runs a Marathon. I think it's called Brittany Runs a Marathon. Okay. Have you seen it? It's got a comedian in it whose name is totally escaping me, but she's the woman who runs a marathon, and it's just so heartwarming. It's so cute, and it's funny, and it's just nice. And the other movie that I saw that was like that, which was really funny, was, and you've probably seen it, the Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar.
The who?
Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar.
No, I have not seen that, and I'm
You've
embarrassed
got to see that.
Because
it's so funny. You'd like it.
I will definitely put that on. Maybe that'll be my Sunday night thing. Okay, good. Well, we've settled that. I think that's it for today. Anything else? I mean, we've settled human genetics, so hooray for us once again. We're solving cancer. Have you seen those articles that talk about how there have been found possible cures for various types of cancer? Yes. Very exciting. Was it colon cancer? There are different types. One was pancreatic cancer, and I think colon cancer was one, and just different types. Pancreatic cancer is the big one to me, because that's the one I'm planning on getting. Oh, well, I mean, yeah, I actually know 2 people who have developed pancreatic cancer. It's the worst. Yeah. I mean, I know them remotely, knew them remotely. One was a boss whose brother was the pilot on September 11th, whose plane landed in D.C.
In the field? Oh, in D.C. Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's harsh.
Yeah. And so, unfortunately, he came down with pancreatic cancer.
Nice.
But so marvelous news that's afoot. And the very, very important Nova documentary that I was watching this morning. Fast forwarding through to get to the scientific parts. I don't care about all the morality. Boring. I want green skin and I want to be able to fly. I don't give a fuck.
I know, right? CRISPR could probably do that for you if they really figure out a way to use it. You could get any color eyes you wanted, and I don't think it would work in living humans, but maybe fetuses. So anyway, that's the whole problem.
Right. And so they can make edits to your genes that will impact you, right? And so these are things that control metabolism, pain, you name it, right? Can they get to eye color yet? There's a combination of genes, but we will be able to do that. I'll say we because now I'm part of that team. But there's another type of cell in the human body, which is called a germline cell, which are going to say the sex organs or the sex cells, right? Ovum and sperm. And those don't pick up the Cas9 gene editing stuff, right? They're slight variants that would not be impacted. There is a way to make changes to them. So right now, the changes that they're making impact the mother, but would not impact the daughter. So these changes would not be inherited.
Interesting.
That said, they can, and China has made edits in fetuses, and so that's how we know about the HIV edit, because they've successfully done that with fetuses in China. And so the scientific community is working through a moral contract that every scientist must sign. You will not work on fetuses and you will not work on germline, right? Because we can't make changes that will get into the wild because like those crayfish, we won't see it coming until it's too late, right?
Exactly.
And so, tough and interesting, but yes, those changes are coming. Oh, right. So the point that I was kind of there was something I was going to say that was more than just, which is, our lives will change drastically, not in 50 years, but in 10.
Wow. Well, of course, that's what they always say, 5 to 10 years, and then it turns out to be much longer. But that it's possible. It's entirely possible that it is actually going to be 5 to 10 years for this one. So,
those horseless carriages, man, they are going to take over the world.
Eventually. Self-driving cars everywhere. Well, thank you, Theo. Thank you for the podcast.
Thank you, Juliette. Thank you for the podcast.
And we will see everyone same time next week. I think that's it.
Yes, we had a sign off that we said we were going to use all the time, and it was something like, "We love you, please come back."
You. See you later.
Yeah.
So we love you, everyone. See you later.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Apologies Accepted, the podcast.
You can find links to the articles and the sources in the show notes.
To submit an apology or find out more, visit us at apologiesaccepted.net, where you can also find our merchandise.
We're on Twitter at Apologies Accepted.
And on Instagram at apologies.accepted.
You can support our important work at Patreon.com/Apologies Accepted.
And fuck Facebook.
Bye.